We've now crossed 3 oceans on our voyage around the world. Thousands of miles have passed under Florence's keel, but over 90% of those miles have been steered by our secret third crew member. A crew member who doesn't eat or sleep and doesn't consume any power. In this short video, we'll introduce our most useful crew member, our Aries wind vane, an autopilot that steers Florence tirelessly. But instead of being powered by electricity, this autopilot is powered entirely by the wind and water. We filmed this video as we were sailing downwind in the trade winds, halfway across the Indian Ocean.
So I guess you might ask, what do we actually have to do to sail Florence when it's in conditions like this? Because we set the sails, it's really all we do is sit here, keep a lookout, and occasionally adjust the steering by a degree or two one way or the other. And the steering is actually all being done by our Aries wind vane autopilot, which is a fantastic bit of kit. I think it's actually older than Florence, and Florence is, 35 years old now? Yeah, it's an amazing bit of kit that steers Florence all the way across the world with no electrical power whatsoever, just using the power of the wind and the water. If you see that kind of plank of wood that's sticking up at the back there, that is the wind vane for the mechanical self-steering Aries autopilot that we've got. And that's translating any changes in wind direction, and that's controlling the wheel, and you can see the wheel moving back and forth. That's all being controlled by that paddle sticking up at the back of the boat there. When we want to adjust the direction that we're sailing in slightly, all we have to do is reach back, grab hold of one of the control lines and just give it a couple of tweaks, and each one of those tugs moves us about 6 degrees of course change. So you can see this paddle behind me is waving back and forth, and that's the wind that's pushing it back and forth, depending on the angle that the wind is pushing on it. So to start using the Aries, first we set the boat going the direction we want to go, and then we adjust the angle of this using the mechanism at the bottom here, so that this is vertical, so the wind is not pushing on one side or the other, and that means we go in a straight line. And then what happens is, if the wind changes, or the direction of the boat changes relative to the wind will start pushing on one side. So if the wind pushes on this side, then the boat heads up. Woo! I can actually steer the boat like this. I'm now bearing away. You'll suddenly see the wheel goes all the way to starboard, long way, and the boat is now bearing away hard. I better get roughly back on course so we're going in the right direction. I think it's pretty cool that this does this all without any electrical power. So how's it actually working? Well, what happens is, as this goes back and forth, there's some gearing that translates the angle back and forth into a rotation. And we've got what's called a servo rudder, which is poking down on the bottom of this in the water, and that rudder hangs down, and then when this leans over, it turns that rudder, and then the water, the force of the water, which is created by us moving through the water, so our own boat speed is creating a force on this servo rudder. Because it's now at an angle, it pushes that servo rudder to one side, because it can lean to one side or the other, and as it pushes it to one side, it pulls on these ropes that are linked up to the wheel, and so it literally pulls on the wheel and steers the boat. If we want to disengage the Aries, we just lift this lever, disengage it, and we can re-engage it by putting it back in.
Here we're sailing in ideal sailing conditions, but the Aries wind vane steering actually works better the windier it is. The stronger the wind, the more force there is pushing on the wind vane paddle, and the faster the water flows over the servo rudder, the more force it has to turn the wheel to steer Florence smoothly. However, conversely, in extremely light winds, the wind vane doesn't have enough power to steer us, so we either steer by hand or turn on our electric autopilot. Wind vane self-steering isn't for everyone. It's more difficult to set up than an electric autopilot, and we have to carefully balance the sails so that we have a neutral helm. It does tend to weave a little either side of the course that we want to steer, so it's most useful when sailing long distances across oceans. But by using this Aries wind vane autopilot instead of our electric autopilot, we save a huge amount of power on board, meaning that we can live with our smaller battery bank, which is just charged by 2 solar panels on top of the bimini, instead of needing a hydro generator, or to run the engine to power an electric autopilot. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and click the bell to get a notification when the next video is released. And let us know what you think of the video. We love reading all your comments.
We would like to thank everyone who supports us, and especially our star patrons.